Hi everyone, Simon for another teardown of a landscape image. So this is, well, I'm 99% sure it's from the same project as the one I treated earlier in another teardown. So this is going to be interesting because it's a slightly different topic than what I usually do, I mean. So in terms of composition, let's have a look at what we got. I think there are interesting things happening, and there are complicated things happening. I'm kind of doing this live, so sorry if I'm thinking out loud. One thing I think that is a bit, I'm not even talking about the framing, but the lighting. There are like stuff in the lighting that are interesting, like this sort of area and the way some part of the bushes are like lit. One thing I don't think is working is that this little tree here, trunk, this little tree trunk here, and all this area here are almost pitch black. And in terms of perception, when you look at it like that, it actually creates a sort of wall here, or even with the house. Well, the house is light, so it's fine. But this area feels extremely like blocking. And the thing that is weird is that you have the same thing here. This is going to be what we'll call our greatest area of contrast, or here actually, because the sky doesn't count. So basically the thing is that you don't enter the image. I'm going to try to re-explain that. But basically, in terms of lighting, the fact that your light is all on the foreground and then that you have this sort of barrier of dark shades here, it means that your gaze is always, or like your look or your eyes is always going to stay in this area. And maybe, because the thing is like sky is actually not really something you're looking at, because as a point of interest, you sort of like, what's the word? Like neutralize it or whatever, because you know it's just the sky, and usually sky is not really the most interesting thing. So basically you're going to alternate your look between this area here and this area here. And this area being too dark, you're not going to look at it. And the thing is, you like this being too dark, you actually don't understand that this is a path, or at least you have to look at it a little bit too intensely to understand that. So I would suggest, I think the framing is fine, but I think the lighting has to be reorganized for several reasons. Sorry. The first one will be, so as I said, to avoid having this dark area here. So what you would want probably is, basically you want to reorientate things. So what you want is to keep that sort of highlight here because it's interesting. You want to keep that path in the light because it's what you want to sort of emphasize, the path. You want to potentially have this in the shadows because this is way too big and catching way too much of your attention. And when you're like catching the attention in the like lower left part of your image and nothing is happening after, it means that you're sort of like stuck here. Or basically, like for instance, in terms of a image, if you're catching your attention here and you don't manage to do anything here and the other point of interest is here, it just means you'll be like, nah, okay, and then you're done with the image because you don't have stuff that brings your eye back up or up into the image. So to counterbalance this, if you darken this, lighten this, it means you're gonna by default have your eye going into that sort of area. So this is what you want to do. Also, another thing that is interesting, if you reorientate your light, so it would come maybe from behind you. Hopefully you would have some sort of cast shadow that would hide a little bit of this. The other fun thing is that you're gonna have this little guy here that is gonna cast hopefully some cool shadows on the vines here, on the ivy, on the house here, because having your one of the main thing you want to get when you have light, well, it's not the main thing, but I mean, that is nice to get, is to get like nice casts, soft shadows of the surrounding vegetation on your project. Even though it's not a point of interest, it just means that it's going to activate a little that area so that you can then have this idea of like walking around that point of project. One thing I think that is a little bit tricky here is that this area is extremely messy, but not in a not in a good way. Not that there's like a good way to be messy, but well, actually there is, but whatever. I think here the issue is that it's extremely complicated to make the difference between the foliage that would be coming up from like behind us on top of our head and from this tree here that has, I think, this type of thing. So it's a bit tricky because it gets like a bit messy. But the thing is that the actual model and the look of it is interesting. So you wouldn't want to get rid of it. So what I would suggest that I think would work is that maybe just by reorienting your light, and if you get like a proper, this is like what we call like figure-ground relationship. So it's like basically the ability to read this thing because there's like a high contrast in between. Whereas here you can see that it's green on green or on dark green, which makes it complicated to read. So what you want, if you actually reorient your light, is that maybe this is gonna get like much more light and it's gonna get like a different shade. And this in your foreground is going to stay dark because the light is coming from above it, which means that then you will have enough contrast for it to be legible as a foreground. If this is not enough, I would suggest then again some slight depth of field so that basically the depth of field enables you to read the different planes. And then I think it would work in an interesting way. Regarding the sky, I think it's fine. One thing I think is a bit annoying is this area here where it's like you can look into the infinity, whereas this is something that I think is extremely rare and something should happen here. So either you have your hedges turn like doing the 90-degree thing and you have something happen here, or maybe there's like a back plate that you have to put with like mountains or whatever. But the fact that there's like a bright white spot right in the middle of your image is really not a good, it's almost the middle. But yeah, it's definitely not a good thing because this is not a point of interest. So you have to work on it. Last but not least, but it's actually least, I really like the kind of reflection here, even though I'm not sure that kind of stone can get that kind of reflection. One thing though also is the quality of the texture here. That is a bit like, it's not that good. It would be interesting to at least have like a little bit of, how's it called, like displacement and get like less clean edges. So something like this. The rest here is really nice, and like in terms of color, I think all the different shades of green work really well, so that's a really good thing. That's why I think it's more of an issue of lighting. And also one thing that is nice is that the fact that the sky is quite burnt is that you get like only these nice shades of green and like shades of blue because of the shadow, but you don't have like a weird color palette where like strong blue coming from the sky that is like really hard to work with. So that's really nice. And in terms of contrast, I think it's quite nice. So yeah, good job. Just the light to place differently, I think. And then it will be extremely nice suddenly. So yeah, hopefully the little tips I've mentioned will help people, and I'll see you in the next Teardown. Cheers guys, bye.